Welcome to our 10th Media Hub. Welcome to what we call the MAHA Revolution. I'm Tony Lyons, president of MAHA Action. We're working to rebuild trust after a generation of corruption. We've been silenced, we've been censored, and now we're talking out loudly. It's not going to be easy. We have thousands of influencers on this call listening each week. We have them reposting what we ask them to repost. We have a real army working with us. We've got a great mailing list, almost 2 million people and growing. We've got a great Substack called the MAHA Report. We're having big events all around the country. We've got the MAHA Institute having regular roundtables. So we're building an incredibly powerful movement. But the odds against us are still really high. These corrupt corporate interests have made billions of dollars while the American people have become the sickest people on earth. And these companies want to just keep right on doing what they've been doing. They're making a lot of money doing it. But we voted for an outsider who would shake up the status quo because the status quo was failing. And President Trump is standing up against some of the most powerful and corrupt people on earth. And he's empowered Secretary Kennedy to make bold, sweeping, decisive reforms. We've been called anti-vaccine, anti-science, conspiracy theorists, but we're really not anti-anything. We'll talk to anybody. We'll listen to everyone. We're pro-health, pro-truth, pro-children. And the reforms that are coming out of this government are some of the most pro-science reforms that we've had in a generation after a period of time that's been dominated by corporate advertising masquerading as science. So Lee Marinoff later is going to tell you about state after state that is getting in line with MAHA. But we really need congressional Republicans to get on board and to help push these changes, these reforms, these new laws through on the national level. That's how we're going to win the midterms. You know, we can convince voters that we're working for them. And that's what's really going to make the difference. So we need to make cultural change as much as, just as much as we need to change laws. We need to change the way people think, and we're clearly doing that. And we need to reintroduce competition, incentivize new ways of thinking and products that are healthier. We need to lower the toxic load on every American. And that means healthier food, fewer drugs, fewer pesticides, fewer, safer, spread out vaccines, more personalized medicine across the board. We're not looking to ban things as much as we're looking for radical transparency so that people can make better choices, look at alternatives to a one-size-fits-all system that's wasted billions of dollars and given us the worst health outcomes on earth. As you'll learn soon from Shira Boulder's story, we also need early testing and screening to prevent all kinds of things, including cancer deaths. There's so much we can do, so much that we are starting to do, and so much more that we can get done in the next 3.5 years. So I'm excited for it. I'm grateful to all of you. And I'd like to start off by welcoming Dr. Oz, who has courageously helping to transform the way we think about public health towards prevention versus chronic disease management. Thanks so much, Dr. Oz.
Tony, I want to congratulate you for all the wonderful leadership you've offered to a powerful movement. I want to encourage all of you to remember that we all have to do this together. This is not going to be a cookie cutter approach. Everyone has their own approach to how they interpret even what MAHA is. Today, my team at the CMS stands for Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. We sat with Secretary Kennedy. This is actually the presentation there. And you can see it speaks very clearly into the fact that MAHA has a growing role in how we think about healthcare. Now, in order to explain why that's so critical, $1.75 trillion passes through the agency that the Secretary and President Trump asked me to run. And that kind of money allows you to push people to do things that you think make sense. Money does motivate folks. And so if we use it correctly, we'll empower patients while incentivizing people to do the right thing, taking care of those patients. And the way we function is by going across the street from where I am. I'm looking at the Capitol building from my vantage point here in my office at CMS. But we also have the opportunity to make rules. So Congress makes laws, right? And I think Tony's absolutely right. We need Congress to hear from you. It matters to them. They don't get called a lot on issues unless those issues start to become important. And if MAHA is important, they should hear from you. But if Congress is not going to pass a law, which can be challenging, it gives the right to agencies like mine to write rules, which basically announce to America what we think should happen. And within that rule-making process, you have some controls. And if you define MAHA as making it easier to be healthy in America, then if we're going to make it easy, we've got to change some of the realities because, as Tony said, we didn't get here by accident. There's a reason we're the heaviest country on earth. There's a reason so many of us can be seen from Google Earth. It's because we've created an environment. Someone laughs at my jokes, Lee. But you get folks into this sort of, they normalize problems that we shouldn't think are okay. And so you get people excited about it, they move forward. So one of the rules that we put out on Friday to close the business addressed a couple of things that we think will make it easier to be, oh, there he is. I'm glad Russell dressed up for me. You get to meet all these folks in a second. But if you think about the way that we use our money, it needs to be spent to get the most value for people. There's a lot of low value care and no value care. That's, of course, fraud. So in that rule that we put out on Friday evening, we took on an industry that had launched a huge lobbying effort to try to convince Secretary Kennedy, myself, and others in the administration not to take on an area that we thought had gotten sullied by bad players. And again, a lot of the people in this space, which is called skin substitutes, they're making life-changing, life-saving tools to help close wounds. But some bad apples had gotten into it, and they were starting to defraud the government tens of billions of dollars. That kind of money actually does hurt beneficiaries a lot because you have to charge everyone extra money to pay the bills because there's so much unexpected spending taking place. So in our rules process, we took on the special interests, took on some powerful groups who didn't want the change to happen. And much of the change that I thought needed to happen was important because it sends the right message that this administration is serious about reforms. We want to be honest. We're going to take out fraud, waste, and abuse whenever we see it. And for that reason, you can expect that if you're doing things that don't help the American people, we'll be eventually coming for you. So you might as well fix the problem now. Clean the neighborhood up now. Don't make us come over there. And by doing that, I think we have many opportunities going into the future because we got goodwill now behind us to make a difference. So that's at the government level. But then there's the individual level. What are you as a person going to do to stay healthier? Because I do think it's your patriotic duty to take care of yourself. It benefits you, obviously, but it's of huge value to the country if you're healthy and thriving in the world and living up to your God-given potential to make a difference and contribute and show up. And so much of what we're trying to do in government is to make it easier for that to happen. So let's say you're a well-meaning doctor, a general practitioner, a small community, and you want to get out there and take care of more patients. We know that when we invest in primary care doctors, because they're the ones that first see patients, they communicate prevention, they communicate MAHA to patients. They're the ones who deal with the chronic illnesses and reduce their impact and prevent the heart attacks. Not a person like me, as a heart surgeon, I operate on the heart attack, and I get paid a lot of money to do it. So in this same rule that I spoke about earlier, on Friday night, we took 2.5% of the salaries of people like me, specialists, again, highly paid, well compensated. I trained a long time. I'm plenty happy to take the money, but it's zero-sum game. If you take money from one section of the medical field, you have to actually put it into the other section. So we took 2.5% of the money of people like me, and we invested it in primary practitioners to allow primary practitioners to pay back med school debts and actually choose that as a profession. But the final slug is you. As I started and I'll end it with, it's each and every one of you. Can you take care of yourselves? And there's a story that I want you to hear. A very close friend of mine, a woman who's so fit that she's my basketball partner, playing her children who are teenagers and quite adept, quite good athletes. And what I love about Shira Bowler is a truly competitive person does not let their children win. A truly competitive person enjoys drinking the tears of the pain of as they whittle down the defenses of their children and take victory one more time. And she did this with me at a classic basketball match that just shows her personality. And I did nothing. I literally passed her the ball. She scored. Why am I telling you this story? Because she called me a month ago and told me that she had lung cancer. Now, this is a young woman, a non-smoker, excellent shape. and a wonderful human being. And as many of you probably know, lung cancer comes in many forms. Much of it's not associated with cigarettes. It might be associated with toxins in the environment, but I'll let Shira tell that story. But Shira is well connected. Her husband, Adam, is a very close friend, actually worked in this agency where I am now in the first Trump administration. He now is rescuing hostages around the world on behalf of the U.S. government. He has a formal position, literally going out and, pulling people out of war-torn areas. And this well-connected family, and they have means, were thrown off like most people are when they get a bad illness. And she had to struggle to get the right advice from the right kind of doctor, the right kinds of life-saving procedures done. And it's her story that I think in many ways captivates what MAHA is about. Taking charge of your future, owning the reality that you're in and making a difference, and then giving back. And Shira's on the call right now because I think her wisdom will benefit everyone here. But it's about as MAHA as it gets, but it's not MAHA the way that many of you have defined it. I want you to stretch your minds and think about MAHA as much bigger than, eating a little better and getting a little exercise. It is restructuring the healthcare system, as Tony has articulated, to make sure that it's fair for all of us, that it's affordable, and that we make it easy to be healthy. So Shira Bowler, I love you dearly. I look forward to our rematch with your kids. I hope they've stopped crying.
Thank you, Dr. Oz. And the rematch is on. Thank you for the warm introduction. And I just want to reiterate a little bit of what he said. I'm an ordinary person, and I've just navigated this broken system over the past month. And what I've realized is that MAHA is all about changing the status quo. And that's what I feel like I'm here for today. And I want to talk to you about my journey over the past month. And I think that President Trump was nominated, Secretary Kennedy was put at the helm of HHS, and Dr. Oz is his right hand in order to do that. I'm the mother of 4. I'm a lifelong runner and basketball player. I'm a never smoker, and now I add to my resume a lung cancer survivor, and I never thought in a million years that would be me. And I think that the reason I'm alive today, I know that the reason I'm alive today is that I was proactive. I got a scan. I believe in the MAHA movement. I take care of myself every single day, whether it's with food or getting these scans. And I took control of my health, and that is why I'm here today. I had no symptoms. I was not a family of lung cancer survivors. And what I learned through this whole process is that lung cancer is actually killing more young, healthy women than breast cancer and ovarian cancer and uterine cancer combined. And we are in a female health crisis, and we need to take control of our health, and we need to change the status quo and fix this broken system. And I think the other side of it is MAHA gets silenced a lot. People think it's not science. My doctors are here with me now. This is about science. I did get that scan, and I can sit here today and tell you that I'm a lung cancer survivor. And I think prevention starts with these scans, and it's a big part of what MAHA is. I've written my story down. It's called One Scan Saved My Life. And I hope that you go out and get a scan and proactively take care of your own health, and it can save your life too.
Thanks so much, Shira. Yeah, it really is a fantastic story, and we'll have you on multiple times to talk about it.
Thank you.
Next up, we have somebody who has been a comedian, an actor. He's a Christian. He's writing a book. He's a wonderful advocate for the MAHA movement. And more, he's becoming a close friend. Very, very happy to welcome Russell Brand.
Thank you so much, Tony. And thank you, Shira Bowler, for that testimony and account of rising lung cancer diagnosis. And I also enjoyed the way that Dr. Oz said that we must increase what we consider to be the position and condition of MAHA. What has always appealed to me about this movement has been the opportunity to maintain focus on universal matters, personal health, caring for one another, not just eating a little better, but eat in a way that's conscious. And what we can learn when eating and medicine become so corrupted and so distorted that people are made sick at a national level. It excited me more than I can tell you when someone like Secretary Kennedy went from a peripheral to a central political figure and then surrounded himself with brilliant people, some of whom we're privileged to share this call with, like Dr. Oz. And I see Callie Means is coming up next. I mean, Callie Means, I've known him a little while now. I'd go so far as to say here to describe him as a kind of brilliant savant. Like when he describes his whistleblower journey, is kind of extraordinarily exciting. He's the first person that helped me to understand that the majority of foods contain what in more sensible times might be regarded as poisons when it comes to, sort of seed oils and dense sugars. When people say that if sugar was discovered now, it would be categorized as a drug rather than as a food. I increasingly understand that. It's brilliant to have someone on like Shira Bowler, who in some ways is exceptional. She's an exceptional person, very sort of bright and unusual. And one time I went with her and Adam Bowler, her husband, who, as Dr. Oz says, literally goes around the world negotiating hostages out of, sort of peril. And he's an unusual dude, that guy. He's an unusual dude. I'll tell you that. That Adam Bowler, he is not normal. I suppose you wouldn't be if you're a hostage negotiator. Anyway, like to hear somebody share an account of how toxicity environmentally might be so significant that even if you live what might be understood to be a healthy lifestyle, you're still at risk, in a way shows the importance of what we're all doing here. And it certainly shows the significance of the Children's Health Defense. And I'm going to be this weekend in Austin with Cheryl Hines, and I'm sure a lot of people on this call participating in a show. Will you be there, Lee? I'm going to be there. Yeah, do you probably run it or something? Are you in charge of the whole event? Yours? Board member, there you go, more or less. I'll be in Austin, I believe, this Saturday night. I don't know what you have to do to attend, but I'm sure you'll be informed about that in more detail later. I want to express my gratitude at being able to participate in the Children's Health Defense. And again, in an increasingly fracturing time where I've just been doing a podcast just now, and the first part of the podcast is dedicated to talking about how Mamdani is like a... Oh, bless you, I hear that. Describing how Mamdani is a terrible dude and like how it's going to be terrible for New York and that socialism can never work. And I might agree with that diagnosis on the basis that socialism is born of Marxism, Marxism's born of industrialism, and industrialism is no longer a modality around which political systems need to be organized. They need to be organized around modern modalities, obviously. But then in the same call, we talk about Nick Fuentes and the sort of the danger and toxicity of Nick Fuentes. We need unity. We need to, if you're going to have the United States of America, or I suppose a United Kingdom, then one, I suppose, needs to have a set of ideals around which we can agree. And what would be more cohesive and more ordinary, and I mean ordinary in the sense of one might ordinate around it, than children's health, practical, transparent, clinically demonstrable medicine, and spiritual principles around which we can all agree, our shared health, and our collective well-being. I don't like seeing that thing flashing. I don't know if everyone on the call sees what the people that participate see, but if you're a participant, you see this terrifying looking countdown, that sort of thing that you might see if you were Dostoevsky, which he ultimately became Christian. Result of not dying as a result of. I'm doing research, Tony. This book I'm doing for you is going to be good, Praise the Lord. See you all soon. And thanks, Tony, as always. Oh, Callie Meads. Don't mess this up, Callie. Callie, do not mess this up. We've come a long way.
Well, Callie, you've been described as brilliant. You've been described as somebody who's working day and night to take poisons out of food, out of drugs, out of everything that is given to the public. And so I think you're really doing God's work. I'm grateful. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for everything you do.
Thank you, Tony. I'm a little mad at you. I told you I can never follow Russell again. It's a tough guy to follow, but Russell, you're the man, and Shira, that was thank you for sharing that. That was very inspirational, and it kind of tying together what Russell and Shira were talking about. Russell made the point that we need to come together, that we need to have uniting in this country, and I think we're all feeling often like we want to go to war, and I certainly feel that too. But I'm here in Texas, just strategizing with some of the leaders in Texas on some state bills, MAHA ideas, and as we do, talking about bills or talking about actions at HHS, it inevitably gets very tactical. But just with Russell's comments, thinking about, what is the North Star of what we're trying to achieve? And I think it is worth noting, like, the MAHA movement is what we're building to is a uniting vision. It is a bipartisan vision. And just to share a couple of thoughts, I think on the North Star in my head, I was just reading this article from the failing New York Times, but it actually, to me represents almost everything, which is that in 1940, we spent 3% of our income on health, and we spent 25% of our income on food. And now we're spending over 20% of our income on health and about 6% on food. And in Europe, it's reverse. So in Europe, they're spending 3 times or 4 times less per capita on healthcare. So the healthcare is more like food for us because they're spending 2 to 2.5 times more on food. So in France and Spain, they're spending 15% of their income, more than double the United States per capita, on food. So I think what we're trying to do at the end of the day, and it is a long-term conversation, what MAHA, I think it really is about, is national priorities and cultural priorities. We have somehow gone in a very dark direction in this country where there's so much energy and so much money and so many incentives on that healthcare system, which predominantly profits from Americans being sick. Now, in the press, often it's criticized that MAHA is anti-doctor, anti-science. That's not true. I mean, what Shira shared is very important. If we or our child are sick with an acute condition, we should be thanking our lucky stars for the U.S. healthcare system. And there is so much innovation happening in the healthcare system if we are imminently, have a life-threatening condition. And, Casey and I talked about this in our book, being slandered because there's a chapter called Trust Yourself, Not Your Doctor. But what that chapter is actually about is it says very clearly, when we have an acute condition, something that's going to kill you right away, you should see your doctor. And we must get to a world of great acute care, which we do have in this country. And as Shir mentioned, much more early diagnostics, preventative care. But when you look at that graph of how the healthcare system has grown, 95% of that spending is on chronic conditions. And the chronic conditions is what fuels the growth of what is now by far the largest industry in the country. And that's the reckoning that we need to have. And it's very interesting dealing with stakeholders, as Dr. Oz and Secretary Kennedy and others are seeing, is that often the conversations are not about health for Americans or the goals of preventing or reversing our chronic disease. It's about jobs. And there's so much to untangle there. And I think as radical as this is on a policy level, this is going to be a long-term journey. I see it as a 10 to 15-year bridge to where at the end of that, we have much more focus in this country on our soil health, our food, what's going into our bodies. And we're using more of that healthcare system to actually ask how we can reverse and prevent disease instead of where that money is going now to manage disease. All that money is going to managing disease once we're sick. We need to stop poisoning ourselves on the front end instead of cleaning up the mess on the back end. So I just think it's important we keep that in mind. We're continuing to communicate that uniting vision. And what's happening right now in the administration, I think we all want to move as fast as possible. We're all feeling anxious for change, but we have, I think, executed in the first year the most significant reforms to public health in modern American history. I mean, the things Dr. Oz is doing every day with these rule changes which often get lost in headlines, are changing the incentives for tens or hundreds of billions of dollars in a better direction. What we're going to be doing with the dietary guidelines to put a mantle down for whole foods, what we've done with the GRAS standards to actually review what's in our food, what we're going to do with food labeling, what's happening with all these state bills on SNAP reform. I mean, these are very significant public health reforms, and unleashed conversation about medical freedom, medical autonomy. Research at the NIH is actually exploring the root cause of autism and other chronic diseases. These are very significant, but we need to keep that long-term goal in mind, and I think stay positive, optimistic, and realize this is a uniting mission. So thanks a lot, Tony, and thank you to everyone on the call.
Yeah, thanks so much, Callie. Somebody just texted me a picture of HHS right out front, and there are people with signs saying "Fire RFK Jr., impeach RFK Jr." So I'd just like to say, for all the people who are listening here, that this is what it looks like when you start to succeed. That these are very powerful companies. They've made a lot of money at the expense of all of our health, of our children's health. And, they've made billions and billions of dollars, and they hire these outside groups. They control, lots of people at big media companies. And, so when you see the New York Times coming out and saying that pesticides are safe, that toxins in food are safe, and that, Secretary Kennedy is anti-science and dangerous, you kind of know what's happening. And that's the kind of pushback that we're fighting. But the kinds of people who we have on our team are people like the next speaker, and that is Dr. Eric Berg. And he has more than 20 million followers, incredibly level-headed, science-based, very clear thinking. And he's been pushing back really hard with us against all these companies, against all these fake organizations that are set up to try to knock us down, to try to fool the American public. So I'm very grateful for everything Dr. Berg has done, and proud to welcome him here.
Thanks so much, Tony. I really appreciate that. I just want to chime in what you said, because really what you're hearing right now in the media is a bunch of noise. And so you can pretty much just ignore it, because that noise is not coming from the average person. It's manufactured noise that, attack RFK and all these different things. There's really just two groups. We got the group that wants to keep things the same, status quo, maintain it. And then we have our group that wants to change things. Why do we want to change things? Because 76.4% of the Americans basically have at least one chronic disease. And over 90% of chronic disease contributes, or 90% of the 4.9 trillion goes to chronic disease. So there's two agendas that MAHA is really interested in changing. One is the over-medicating people. There's what's called a polypharmacy. I think 1 in 4 Americans are on over 3 different medications, which is just like, are you kidding me? It's like, to me, that's way too much. I know a lot of people are on a lot more, and then also the other agenda, and there's actually 4 primary things to help the chronic disease of children. But the second one is really important, and that's, reducing ultra-processed food calories and improving the diet. And with that comes along getting the doctors more literate in the area of nutrition, food, lifestyle changes, because unfortunately, the first thing that's recommended is a medication. But I wanted to share with you this fascinating older book. Okay, this is an older book. It's called The United States Dispensary, 21st edition. And this is like the Bible for a pharmacist back in 1926. Also for the medical doctor who was using various treatments. And what's really interesting about this book in 1926 is that 75% of the recommendations were botanicals. They were natural herbs, they were natural things. They might have been minerals. Baking soda was one of them. They used methylene blue, which is not natural, but they don't really use that too much anymore. Colloidal silver was really popular. This is before antibiotics. They use all sorts of oils, natural things, cod liver oil, vitamin D, all these things. In 1946, that went down 75%. The natural went down to 50%. So 50% of things were natural. The other half were synthetic. And then by 55, it went down to 25%. And in 1972, it's down to 11%. Okay. Take a wild guess what it is now, currently. Zero. So there's zero natural things that are recommended by your doctor. It's going to be a drug. It's by their guidelines. And what happened to all these natural remedies? That's what I want to know. Well, they became folk medicine. They no longer work. A lot of them were banned because you can't patent them. Yet 40% of drugs were derived from, or at least modeled after, natural plants or plant compounds. So this is where the problem is. There's a tremendous amount of money at stake right now in keeping people in a certain state, of keeping doctors recommending synthetics, of having the doctors not look at in their evaluation food or lifestyle changes. Because if that was factored in there, that would start lowering the chronic disease and lowering the amount of medications that were recommended. But MAHA is about to change that. And this is why I'm involved. This is really exciting. And that's what we're going to be doing in the next year or two. So thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you so much, Eric. It is really fascinating when you talk about the fact that there's zero natural remedies now. That healthcare in this company, in this country has just become all about making money. And that's a big part of what we're trying to change here. So thanks for everything that you've been doing. So the next person is Eric Clay. And Eric, got into this line of work to try to help his mother, who was very sick. And Lee Marinoff, who's coming on later, had her own health journey. And Russell Brand had his health journey. And I have a daughter who's had a really tough health journey. So many of us have seen firsthand what a failed medical system means and, how painful it can be. So very happy to welcome here somebody who is a former professional MMA fighter, a very successful businessman, founder and chairman and CEO of TAM Global, the parent company of TAM Center and TAM CPI, focusing on data-based approaches to complex health issues. You just do spectacular things. So grateful for all the people who I know who have gone to your center, and welcome to our call.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, so I appreciate that. And I've been a supporter of the MAHA movement for a very long time, RFK. It used to be called alternative medicine. I like to say integrative medicine. And what we do is translational medicine, which is bench to bedside. But I started as a mixed martial arts fighter and trainer. I retired in 2012 training fighters. And my mom was sick with a rare form of rheumatoid arthritis. She had failed all standard of care. She got major side effects from the medication. She broke her back on a short fall. She got multiple staph infections, tuberculosis. So she had to get off everything, and I was looking for other options. And I found something in another country, in Mexico, that wasn't available in America. It wasn't available anywhere else in the world. But the hospital that had it had closed 2 years before. And so my business partners and I, Scott and Dedrick, went to look for the owner of the hospital through a real estate agent. We found the owner. We actually bought the hospital from him, hired back the original staff. My mom came in her wheelchair and she left 3 weeks later walking, and she was in remission for 7.5 years. It actually came back after the COVID vaccine. So we've been battling that ever since. But it was a great 7.5 years where she was in complete remission. Since then, I always said we should try to build bridges, not walls. So I would reach out to different scientists around the world doing immunotherapy for cancer specifically, and started building our team. And our chief scientific officer now, for instance, is Franco Marincola. He's the former chief of infectious disease and immunogenetics for the NIH. Our chief innovation officer is Ali Asadi. He was chief of innovation for Illumina. And I found these really disruptors and really understood what translational medicine is, bench to bedside, Franco is also the founder and editor-in-chief of the Journal of Translational Medicine. In 2020, we started Cellular Performance Institute, which is CPI stem cells, probably the largest manufacturer of mesenchymal stem cells in the world. And most of the revenue from the stem cells goes directly into our cancer research. We just finished renovation in June of our hospital. We added a 6th floor where you have 16 PhD scientists, 42 medical doctors working on the same floor, where you have cellular manufacturing, genomics, proteomics, digital pathology, clinical laboratories using what's called a multi-omic approach. In multi-omics, you're talking about preventative medicine. Really, that's where it's at. If you look at specific genomics, like DNA sequencing, it only takes you so far, but when you get into the methylation, the epigenetics, the proteomics, you can really find these preventative type treatments. And so I'd really like to bring to the world what translational medicine is. Before the FDA, clinicians could be doctors, and they were kind of doctors and scientists, where they could find things that could help their patients. They notice things. But really, since then, it's moved away from what kind of was translational medicine at the time, because now pharma and the scientists do the experiments and the trials far away from the medical doctor, and there's really not that camaraderie with the clinician and the scientist. So that's what we built out. It's very science-based. We publish in peer review probably once a month. We have a team that is passionate about helping patients. We have another thing that we built out for context. When it comes to clinical trials in the U.S., it takes 5 to 7 years, $30 to $50 million. We can go to discovery into patient in 6 months. Many times you don't need mouse models now. We can just use tumor lines and do our experiments on those. So that's very disruptive. We have labs in Boston, Nashville, and we look to start our clinical trials in 2026 with mesenchymal stem cells of the disc. We're looking to do an autism clinical trial and a couple different cancer immunotherapy trials.
Ed, that's just so great to see you doing all of that and pushing so hard. There's just been so much fake corporate science. So to see you out there, doing things that are really cutting edge is just a great thing. So thanks for coming on, and thanks for everything that you've done and that you continue to do.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So next up, we have a doctor who's also been a scientist, and who more than anybody else during COVID had the courage to speak out. In one of the darkest times in our history, when we were censored, we were not allowed to really talk about almost anything that had to do with science. We were just told what to think, what to believe, what to put into our bodies. And Dr. Robert Malone went on to Joe Rogan. 50 million people watched him, and it just inspired, the entire country at the time. It was just a pivotal moment, a real turning point. So thanks so much for everything that you've done, and thanks for coming back on.
Well, thanks a lot, Tony. Your comment about once a scientist, what comes to mind is that's like saying once an alcoholic. Once you're a scientist, I don't think you ever recover from that affliction. At least I haven't. So today, let's talk a little bit about the election. For some of us, it was a disappointment. Now, the MAHA movement, this grassroots movement that is the most powerful grassroots political force in the United States right now, is not just Republican. It's not red. It's not blue. It's purple. It's truly bipartisan. But for many of us, the elections that just occurred and the implications for the midterm are profound. But let's look at that a little bit. Let's kind of look under the covers. In all those elections, we really had states that the elections that went for the Democrats, like, for instance, New Jersey and Virginia, and of course the New York City election that's very close to home for Tony there at Skyhorse. What we had was really strong, longstanding Democrat bases. In the case of Virginia and our outgoing governor, we had a turnover at the last election that was the consequence of basically angry moms that were rejecting the whole trans agenda and the impact of that in particularly Northern Virginia schools. So what happened electorally here in terms of the outcomes was very consistent with what has been the norm in all of these states. And there wasn't a huge statistically significant shift in any of those states in terms of voting patterns. But it does raise the point that in none of those states did those that were running embrace the Make America Healthy Again movement. And I hope that the conclusion that comes now, if there is a substantial examination by the parties about what just transpired, was that to overlook the Make America Healthy Again movement is not in their political best interest. I think the key emphasis here is that these politicians really need to get on board because we, the MAHA movement, are a major political force now. Again, it's not partisan, it's bipartisan. It cuts across everybody that cares about children, that cares about improving children's health, improving longevity, getting toxins out of our foods, safer foods, more transparency. Who can be against this? Well, apparently, the Democrats have decided they're against it because we can see that in the various testimony that occurred in the hearings in the Senate, in which Secretary Kennedy was really put on the grill like a shrimp on the Barbie there. And that was really not very pretty moment. I don't think I know Secretary Kennedy didn't deserve that. And I'm pretty sure that that was counterproductive in terms of electoral policy and outcome. But the message I want to give today is that we as a group, this Make America Healthy Again movement, are in a position to basically determine the outcome of the midterms. The question is, will members of the House and the Senate recognize the importance of our movement, our agenda, our initiatives, the force of the interest in this by key constituencies. I mean, this Make America Healthy Again movement really played a key role in electing the president, the current president, swung a number of states, and resulted in major crossover between from Democrat to Republican voters. Furthermore, polling is showing that the actual agenda items, the issues that we're all focused on of food improvement, health promotion instead of medical treatment, et cetera, are winning issues and important across both parties. Now, so I want to make sure that nobody gets discouraged by this and that they focus on trying to get our representatives, which party they're from is almost irrelevant, to get behind MAHA. It's a winning set of issues for the upcoming midterm, and they ignore us at their peril. Now, with my last few remaining seconds, I'd like to introduce my friend, Kevin McKernan. Kevin is the real deal. You know, there are a lot of pretenders here we were speaking about scientists at the beginning of my little chat here. Kevin is the real thing. He has a fantastic CV, and he's a good person. What I always encounter with Kevin is a complete lack of ego. He is all about the data and about the information, and he's going to share some important findings with you. So please join me in welcoming Kevin McKernan to our group.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Malone. That's quite an intro I need to live up to here. So What am I doing here? My background is in genomics, and I really want to commend Dr. Berg for bringing up all these natural products, because that is my passion. I actually work in the cannabis and psilocybin space, trying to get better characterization of cannabis products and psilocybin products. These natural products that he mentioned have been weaned out of our system. In fact, the second most prescribed drug in 1937 was cannabinoid oil from Lilly, and it has been weeded out of the pharmacopoeia in 1942 in favor of Tylenol. So I think when we talk about MAHA, I think we want to really emphasize this: do no harm, and to do no harm, we really have to start going back and looking at these natural products and what a therapeutic index really is. The therapeutic index of drugs is the ratio of the lethal dose to the effective dose. And in many drugs that we're giving to people today, that window is very small. Like lithium is around 3, SSRIs are 10 to 20, Tylenol is around 15. All right, so 15 times the dose that you want to take therapeutically will kill half the rats. But these natural products that Dr. Berg brought up are in the hundreds to thousands. They are extraordinarily safe, yet they're being systematically eliminated from our food chain or our pharmacia. So now, this background of mine, I've been in the field for genomics for 30 years. We sequence products to see what's in them and build PCR tools to look for microbial content. And we applied those to the vaccines during the pandemic and found things that are in there that shouldn't be there. There's a great, I have a presentation that I gave very recently that Dr. Malone was kind enough to put up on his Substack. I don't have all 35 minutes to go over that today, but I'll point you to that to understand what's going on. But the short version of that is that the drugs that they trialed, at least for Pfizer, were not what they gave to the public. They systematically changed them from a PCR product, which has one type of DNA, to a plasmid piece of DNA that is much larger. So there's additional SV40 components of DNA inside those vaccines that were never in the trial. And that DNA has different epigenetic signatures on it that are more inflammatory to your immune system. So the product that was touted in the media being 95% effective, those numbers aren't real. I'm sure everyone in this community knows there's a difference between relative risk and absolute risk, and they only really presented one of those when they should have presented both. But even those numbers are not really representative of what was given to the population. So these vaccines have contaminants in them, and I think this should be a motivation for us to be sequencing all of them. Because these have undergone almost no scrutiny for many decades now that we have this liability-free vaccine program. We really don't know what are in these products. You can often look into some of these products and find that there's 20 micrograms of chicken DNA inside of a monkeypox vaccine. What is it doing there? Why do you need that much DNA around? We know there's excess DNA inside these Pfizer vaccines and in the Moderna vaccines to some extent as well. And we believe that could be contributing to cancer once you have lipid nanoparticles involved, because this delivers the DNA differently than traditional vaccines. It gets that DNA right into your cells, and those your cells then have a really nasty reaction to that can aggravate oncogenic pathways inside your cells. So this is something that I hope the MAHA movement will jump onto and begin investigating all of the different contaminants that might be in these injectables. It is one thing to have contamination in an edible product, which we look for as well with the sequencing and PCR tools we build. It's entirely more reckless to have it in an injectable. When you start bypassing hepatic portal system, you are opening up your system to very minute toxins that can be tolerated orally but cannot be tolerated via injection. So there's never been an easier time to do this. We've seen the cost of DNA sequencing come down 100,000-fold in the last decade, yet we're still stuck with these regulations where we don't pay any attention to what type of DNA it is. And many people have religious concerns over this, particularly if it comes from any sort of fetal cell sample. So we have the power to look at every piece of DNA that's inside these vaccines and know precisely what it is, how much is there, and whether there are any potential adverse effects that could be generated from that. So I'd also encourage people to look into these natural products, as Dr. Berg has mentioned. There are different supply chains for these in the United States, and they're not all safe and they're not all clean. Our job in that field has been to safety test for these things. And there's 3 distinct markets, at least for the cannabinoids in the U.S. market. There's a black market, which I don't recommend at all. There's the hemp market that has its own issues. It does have banking, but it has no safety testing. And there's a lot of synthetics that are being sprayed on that material and put into vape pens and sold at gas stations and smoke shops. It's a very risky pipeline as well. The only safety tested supply chain we have is state run, and unfortunately it's unbanked. And that's something that I hope the MAHA movement can get behind changing. We need to treat this as one plant, bank everything and test everything. And it will lead us to back toward being able to use these natural products.
Kevin, yeah, that was great. I think it's so important for the MAHA movement to stand up and fight any kind of liability protection, whether it's for vaccines or things in foods or pesticides. Companies that make these products make billions and billions of dollars, and they have to stand behind their products. And the only way we're going to get better products is if when, people produce things that harm the American public, that protect profits and hurt children, then they will stop doing that. They will do their own research, and because they will feel the pain of poisoning the American public. So I think that's a great point, and that whether it's DNA or toxins or all kinds of other things, we need to know what's in the products that we're injecting into our children, that our children are eating, or that's on the vegetables that our children eat. And that's something we can achieve. And there are better alternatives. And I think the MAHA movement really wants to find those alternatives. We want to make sure that we're doing as good a job as we can possibly do. And we're told that it's not possible, that we can't have healthy food, we can't have healthy vaccines or healthy drugs, that all of these things are too expensive or it's too complicated. But those are all just talking points from big pharma, big food, big ag. We can do much better. It doesn't have to cost much more. And in the long run, if we're not healthy and if we don't protect our children, it's going to cost us a hell of a lot more to treat all of the illness that these products create. So the next person we have up is Lee Marinoff. And Lee has just been a warrior for children, for public health. She owns a farm. She has a school on that farm, has helped numerous children there, but manages to be a board member of MAHA Action, of Children's Health Defense, and travels all around the country, meeting with governors, working in just so many different ways to try to protect children, to try to protect public health. I'm so grateful for all the work that she's done. Most people don't know about it because she's just sort of out there doing it day after day, 7 days a week. So thank you so much, Lee, for everything that you've done. And I'm grateful to know you, to be your friend, and to have you on this call.
Oh, thanks, Tony. That's really nice. It's really great to be here. I feel privileged to be with this group of people, and I've learned so much being on and listening to the different media hubs. Today, I'd like to talk about the really great opportunity that America has with the Rural Health Transformation Program, because it gives us a way to really implement root cause, results-driven solutions. It's designed to reverse disease rather than simply treat disease. And I want to discuss today how MAHA Action, how our committee has engaged with this. So I don't know how much the audience knows about the Rural Health Transformation Program, so I thought I would describe it. It came out of CMS. It's a $50 billion federal initiative that came out of the big, beautiful bill. The goal is for it to improve healthcare in rural communities. This is really about prevention and making people healthier. It's not just about treating disease. Dr. Oz has called it a catalytic investment to spark real measurable change in how we treat, feed, and support rural America. This program will reward states that deliver measurable results in access to care, workforce retention, population health, cost reduction, and quality improvement. It's a historic investment in reversing chronic disease and modernizing rural hospitals and rebuilding healthcare infrastructure that's been neglected for decades. One half of the money, the $25 billion, is going to be divided equally among the states, and each state can get $100 million per year for 5 years. It's the other half that we're really talking about, because this is going to be awarded to states depending on their requests and the quality of their implementation. So I really want to emphasize that this is the largest federal investment in rural healthcare reform in U.S. history. Applications, they're due tonight, November 5th. And then CMS has until December 31st to approve these applications. So not only is this the biggest, but it's also the fastest, because the states only had 6 weeks to apply. CMS only has 6 weeks to approve. By January 1st, 2026, these initiatives are going to be approved for funding. At that time, the states are going to open an RFP process for applications for grants. Our committees, MAHA Action, will be there with our pilots, and we're really recommending that everybody get to understand what this is so that you can also be there. We have a committee, and that is called the Strategic Health Initiative. I've spoken about it a little bit. We have created a series of pilots to address the chronic health care. And we traveled, as Tony said, we traveled across the country. We spoke with governors and different health groups in all the states. Well, not all the states. We are active in 23 states, and we reached out to 40 of them. We have 4 main pilots that we recommended. We were able to tell the states why they should use them, what would happen if they did use them, and I wanted to describe them here. Number 1 is that we have a diabetes reversal diet that with remote access, clinical trials have shown that it can reverse 50 to 70% of diabetes within 10 weeks on a keto diet. And if 2,500 patients are enrolled, $1,100 per person can be saved by the states when the diabetes is reversed. This also really reduces ER visits and costly complications. The next initiative we have is an in-home dialysis. This allows the possibility of an overnight treatment to help people really have a much higher quality of life. And it helps with workforce retention, as the dialysis is at night. And often when people live rurally, they might have to drive up to an hour and a half to the diabetes clinic, and they have to go for 3 days. Usually it's 3 days a week. This also is better for the patient because they can do this every single night. A third thing we have is an AI-derived SNAP coupon app. So this app really provides the opportunity to almost triple SNAP dollars, depending on how each recipient uses it. It's provided along with recipes and more. It can help reduce the error rate. So under the Big Beautiful Bill, there is an error fine that's going to come on to the different SNAP programs if they aren't able to reduce their error rate to 6%. And with this AI program, we can help retailers do that. They also will reduce food waste. And along with that, they should have higher margins for retailers. So we think this is something that will be very, we think that the grocers might really be interested in that. We're looking at a few right now, and we're hoping that this can go in really across the country. This week alone, R4 delivered as a gift 3,000 tons of food fruit and vegetables to 6 different states. Today alone, they went to West Virginia. Last week, they went to Rhode Island. They went to New York. And they were going to 3 more states this week. So delivering, it's 6 pallets, 3,000 pounds. And anyway, all the states were very excited about that. The last one we have that we think is really good is a rural hospital menu improvement program with meals that will be based on the new dietary guidelines. It will include a kitchen retrofit and complete workforce development. Along the way, when we spoke to all the governors, what we really saw the governors want to bring back is home economics and SHOP in our K through 12 curriculum. So even though this wasn't one of our main strategic health initiatives for the rural program, we will be going back with that very shortly. And this will involve nutritional education, cooking, and agricultural skills. So we've gone around the country, we've submitted this, and what we found out is that this is really a historical moment in time because, as I said before, never have the rural communities been given money like this. Never have they had this opportunity to flip how they approach healthcare for their citizens. So we are going to really be working on prevention, not treating illness, and the goal would be that the rural communities won't need as much care. Tomorrow in MAHA report, there'll be a follow-up article, and we hope everybody will really take the time to learn about this initiative, call their state reps and thank them for getting engaged, as this funding is really for the health of the states. We will be keeping you all informed with more to-dos as we learn more. Right now, most states will post this publicly, and you can see what your state has chosen. You can call them and ask them to support our initiatives or other initiatives that you also might have. So we're really excited. We want MAHA Action to be engaged in the future of health in the rural communities, and we'll keep you in the loop. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks so much, Lee. You've done a really great job. Next up, we have Senator Rand Paul. He's a doctor, a former surgeon. He's been a real champion for freedom, for government transparency, and has just done an incredible job. We're so grateful for all the work that he's done, and welcome to our call.
Thanks, Tony. For the last several years, my committee has been investigating the origins of the COVID virus. We wanted to know, did this arise naturally from animals or did it arise from the lab? And early on, most of the doctors in charge of public health, Anthony Fauci, Francis Collins, they all assured us that the virus came naturally and probably from a wet market where they sold wild animals in Wuhan, China. One of the coincidences, though, that they had trouble overcoming was that there was a big lab there that had more coronaviruses in that lab, more varieties of coronavirus than any place in the world. In fact, it was the largest repository of coronavirus research in the entire world. And they just said, oh, well, it's a coincidence. We just happened to get it here, but, we have this huge library. Well, people suspected that something was amiss from the beginning. And investigations went on, but many of the things were withheld. One of the key items we learned right in 2021, actually, as we've gone through the presidential election, the first President Trump administration was ending, they released information from the State Department that had been classified that 3 people got sick in November of 2019 in the Wuhan lab. These people were directly working with what many felt was the virus, that they were trying to develop basically a vaccine at the time. The interesting thing is that this vaccine, ultimately the Chinese do develop a vaccine even before our vaccine. The guy that helped develop the vaccine ultimately died 3 months later. He was a general in the PLA, or the Liberation Army, the Communist Party army in China, and he dies 3 months after releasing this vaccine. It's unclear whether he was pushed or whether he jumped from a building, but there was the implication that something fishy was going on. As we've been investigating this, we're getting closer and closer to information that virtually every time we look into a particular individual, some of them in the United States, they seem to have ties to the intelligence community. And you say, well, it's a coincidence. They have knowledge about coronavirus. They're coronavirus scientists. But it seems everyone that we run across seems to have some linkage to our intel agencies. So there is a question. The first question that I asked Anthony Fauci is, did we fund this? And I think that question is unequivocal. Yes, we funded it. Was it dangerous or gain-of-function research where viruses were juiced up to become more dangerous? I think that question is fairly well settled. But there's also a question of whether or not our intel agencies knew more than they've let on. So early on, they investigated and they came down with opinions. And at the CIA, we know from a whistleblower that there were 5 or 6 scientists who basically examined the evidence, and they voted 5-1, 6-1, that the information appeared to indicate that the virus came from the lab. It wasn't naturally occurring, came from the lab, was man-made. But then they were overruled by higher-ups at the CIA. We are in the midst of discovering, and believe we have discovered, some linkage between all these people that shows some conflict of interest, that people had ulterior motives for pushing these other theories. I wrote a book about a lot of this, but we're discovering things beyond what I put in the book. The book I wrote was Deception, the Great COVID Cover-Up, and in it we talked about how Anthony Fauci, Francis Collins, and several other famous virologists were all privately saying, oh my goodness, it looks like it's been manipulated. Look at this part of the sequence, the RNA sequence. This is unusual. We don't see this in nature. Looks like it was manipulated. And publicly, almost simultaneously, the very same time they're saying in private, they thought it came from a lab, they're saying publicly, oh no, it looks like it couldn't have come from the lab and you're a conspiracy theorist. What I can tell you is not definitive conclusions yet, but I can assure you that we continue to work on this issue. We're looking at communications between the scientists. We're looking at conversations between the scientists, and we're looking at linkages, particularly to our CIA, and we're going to have more information on this. Our hope is to have public testimony and to make all this public in the next several months. It's not as easy as it sounds. Many people who you request their testimony will refuse. If they refuse, they can be subpoenaed. Subpoenas can be challenged in court. But to anybody who's frustrated and thinks I've given up on this, I want to assure you we have not given up. The investigation has dozens of members of my staff reading through thousands of pages of documents. And I can thank Secretary Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, for being very open and forthright with this when there were many members of any administration who wouldn't. He promised from the beginning he would be open and transparent. And because of him, we are slowly but surely getting to the truth. And we'll give you another update in the near future. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks so much.
Straight.
Where?
Straight in front of your face.
Yeah, just wanted to quickly show Senator Rand Paul's book. Fantastic book. Want you all to know about it. So thanks so much for coming on, and thanks for all the incredible work that you've done, and thanks for just never quitting. Because there are so many things that had to do with COVID that we still need to get to the bottom of, and I trust you that you're going to keep pushing until we get there.
Thanks, Tony.
Sure. So I just want to thank all of you for joining us today, and say that there's so many people who come on to these calls. We've had senators, governors, old business people like Ed Clay. We've had doctors and scientists. Let me just say it again, scientists, not once a scientist, but always a scientist like Dr. Robert Malone. But just so many people who are working so hard. And we've had people like Shira who have suffered themselves and who want to help people based on the things that they've learned through their suffering. So it's an incredibly broad coalition. And I just want to make it clear that this is a powerful coalition. And like Dr. Robert Malone said, this is a coalition that Congress people ought to, really follow and recognize that we can help, that we want to help with the midterms. This is a top priority for us. We want to be sure that Secretary Kennedy and that President Trump are, empowered to complete the incredible missions that they've set out to achieve. So before we go, I want to just go through a couple of things. And one of them is that we need all of you to submit your comments to stop the EPA's chemical safety rollback. Because, like I said before, we're against every kind of liability shield, whether it's chemicals or pesticides or vaccines or anything in our food. We're not for banning things, but we are absolutely not for giving an incentive to companies that poison the American public. So the last couple of things are really like you all to stay informed, to go to the mahaaction.com website, to subscribe to the MAHA report on Substack. That's an incredible Substack. It's got just great articles coming out every single day. And then I want all of you just to recognize once again, now I've said it 2 or 3 times, but the people who have come on and the people listening and watching, we have hundreds of millions of followers. We have so much power, and we need to use that power to make Americans healthy. We've got such an incredibly poor record, and it's a disgrace to the country. We can do better. President Trump and Secretary Kennedy want to do better, and we are going to do better. So thanks so much to all of you, and we'll see you next week.
America's children are sick, and moms have been betrayed. The time for empty promises, long past. Now is a time for action. MAHA is the most powerful force of collective action in generations. The grassroots power of moms and activists has created an army of health warriors with more reach than all mainstream media combined. Together, we can end the chronic disease epidemic. MAHA's influence is reaching millions. It's reaching Congress. And that energy, these chain reactions, are working.
How about Operation Stork Speed?
Dozens of food companies removing toxic ingredients.
I plan to lead by example.
MAHA is now.
We're talking about how to change the culture.
The American people want America healthy again.
There's a renaissance moment in health in America.
For health, freedom, and the truth. Join us at MAHA Action.